Tagalog o ang mother tongue or ang provincial language, hindi
Sa
po nila yan.
Amerikano. Sinira talaga ng mga colonizers yung
Because Philippines is a
cultural
multilingual country.
identity natin
Learners
as
begin their
Filipinos.
education in the language that
For centuries, communication was more than the exchange of words. It was a tool of power. When European colonial powers arrived across Asia, Africa, and the Americas, they brought not only armies and governments, but languages that were forced into the center of education, governance, and identity. In the Philippines, Spanish missionaries controlled literacy for over 300 years. Under American rule, English became the new medium not simply as a language but as a system of thinking. Colonial administrators believed their language was superior, and by imposing it, they could reshape colonized societies. The result? Local languages were labeled backward or uncivilized. Children were punished for speaking their mother tongues in school. Indigenous knowledge was rewritten and erased in foreign words.
Language became a boundary. Those who mastered the colonial language gained access to education, jobs, and power, and those who didn't were left behind. Colonialism did not just redraw maps, it rewired how people communicated, how they understood themselves, and how they were allowed to speak.
Nanding alayang laman. Si zero. O ngeni. Atine naman. Pilan. Metong o isa. Ulitan niya.
But the ears are not open. Inhati na iinom, di mabukao, no? Kasi makatugod.
Okay? So, they're included in a CGU.
Even now, long after colonial administrations have disappeared, their communication systems remains deeply embedded. English is at a global academic standard. Curricula still prioritize Western frameworks. Accents still shape how people perceive intelligence and professionalism. Students who struggle with a foreign language are often assumed to struggle with the concept itself, even when they understand it perfectly in their mother tongue. Modern communication is fast, global, and diverse, but it still carries the shadow of linguistic hierarchy created during the colonial era.
Decolonization began politically in the mid-20th century as nations reclaimed their sovereignty, but cultural and linguistic decolonization came later. Researchers, educators, and communities began asking, why must learning happen in someone else's language? Why do we measure intelligence through a colonial standard? Who benefits when students abandon their mother tongue? Movements grew in different perspectives, especially mother tongue based multilingual education. The goal was not just to restore languages, but to transform the structure of communication so students learn with their identity, not against it. Thus, we dwell on a simple but important question. Does the use of students' native languages in school really reflect decolonization?
The education system in the Philippines has been influenced by its colonial history. It has been shaped by the different countries that once colonized the Philippines. However, the current education system is more closely linked to American practices. In terms of the medium of instruction, the country mainly uses English and Filipino. Because it is an archipelago made up of over 7,000 islands, it also uses more than 100 languages across the country. This makes communication more efficient for children from different provinces. Afterwards, English has been primarily used as the language of instruction, especially in more urban areas. With the Philippines' colonial history, some schools are now exploring teaching approaches linked to decolonization methods that help make learning more effective, relatable, and easier for students to understand. The use of more than one language has long been a foundational part of society, reflecting the world's linguistic diversity. According to UNESCO's World Atlas of Languages, there are 8,324 languages in the world, and 7,000 of these are still in use. However, among those 7,000, only 351 languages are used as a medium of instruction in schools. Furthermore, on International Mother Language Day 2025, UNESCO released a new report which emphasizes the importance of incorporating multilingualism in schools so that children can be taught in languages they understand. Why is multilingual education important? Mother tongue based instruction allows learners to study in the language they understand and speak best, leading to better performance across different subjects, including science and mathematics. Studies show that children taught in their first language develop stronger reading and comprehension skills, which in turn makes it easier for them to learn other languages.
Do I think if colonialism influenced how people communicate today? Definitely, English language is sort of um, considered as if it's, or it should, no, not as if, it should be the mode of communication in how we articulate in education, in how we articulate the instructions.
Yes, I would say so.
Yes.
Is definitely the process of decolonization is difficult, so much so that almost everything is structured in design as a result of colonialism. The way we think, the way we dress, our politics, our education, almost every institutional organizations are designed as a result or a byproduct of colonialism. It's tricky because your questions prefer. When I teach, it's not a conscious thing. Like, oh, I should teach in Bisaya now. Or I should deliver the instruction in Bisaya now. Kaya mas makasabot sila. It's not like a conscious thing. Perhaps also because I am a product of a system where we were taught to speak and articulate in English. In order for our students to be globally competitive, we must teach them also on how to, speak in English, articulate in English language. I prefer teaching in mother tongue. Yeah? I prefer teaching in Bisaya. Kaya I feel like mas makasabot ang mga estudyante kung mag-Bisaya. Pero, because of my wiring, I am now unconsciously, right, by default, accustomed to explain in English. Definitely, I think it's the comprehension of students must dali at ang time. No, but there are also limits to that, especially that our curriculum is designed and crafted in English language. Now, the challenge is how do you then deliver that to the students? How do you give your instruction when the materials that we use are written in English language? You have to also ask and you have to think that there are certain vocabularies and certain words that do not have this exact meaning in Bisaya.
In the pursuit of decolonizing oneself from the persistent use of the English language in an educational setting, there are various beliefs which we are made to internalize that contradict this objective. One of those was local languages are not allowed in the classroom. According to an article made by Kate Bingham of Yale Review of International Studies, many Filipinos view English proficiency as essential to the nation's economic and political progress, which is why its use is strongly promoted in schools and universities. Furthermore, the government itself urges schools to implement rules about it, and with the same article, Bingham stated that the Philippine Commission enforced Act number 74 with three primary reasons. English was considered a practical language It could serve as a unifying medium for Filipinos, and teaching it would help impart Western values to the population. The argument for using English as a unifying medium for Filipinos is antithetical to what was written in history, and which the late President Manuel Quezon decreed for Tagalog to be the common language for communication and education, as well as an act of moving forward from the colonial period of Filipinos. However, this was not properly implemented over time, and English remained dominant in both formal education and public life. Moreover, the justification of this law creates an idea derived from the colonial mentality, assuming that a foreign language is a better medium of instruction rather than our own language that represents our cultural identity. With this, we are restricted from using Tagalog or our mother tongue since practicing the English language in classrooms has always been the standard at most for every student. However, this practice is not constantly applicable. Research comparing Northern Mindanao tertiary students' fluency and self-confidence in non-native English classrooms had further found that the mother tongue instruction environment significantly outperformed the English-only policy setting. Under the EOP, students exhibited a slow fluency level and reported moderate anxiety, often code switching due to the fear of incorrect pronunciation. Conversely, in the empty environment, students demonstrated increased fluency and felt more relaxed and willing to volunteer answers, allowing them to express themselves more freely and effectively. To further provide more insight to the matter of decolonialization in the aspect of education, in a teacher's perspective, here at MSU IIT, we extended our interview to address the question: how do you view the use of English in the Philippines, especially in classrooms where local languages are often discouraged? And what impact do you think this has on Filipino culture and identity?
Uh, well, those were, as I have mentioned, mga issues ba, realities, nuances in terms of discussing decolonization, colonization, that the use of English, for example, have become part of the very institutions that we are part of in the society. You can start by recognizing that we have our own language, and we should not always depend and take proficiency and competency in using English language as a measurement, no, of someone's intelligence or brilliance. It's just one of the many factors. We also encourage na we use our mother tongue or our own languages, even dialect, no, as long as it can actually or effectively and efficiently convey our ideas.
The interviews demonstrate that colonialism had shaped and systematized our language practices, leading to the adoption of English and Spanish influences within our mother tongue. Our hesitation to decolonize or reclaim our identity comes not from reluctance, but from the fact that the colonial system ingrained the notion of English superiority as necessary for global mobility and power, making separation difficult.
Despite the Philippines' rich linguistic diversity, the colonial system that places it as the medium of instruction seems to continually dominate the educational landscape. However, our own teachers and students contrasted to this idea. The interview findings proved a point on the importance of utilizing the mother tongue language and adopting multilingual languages, as this helps students to be able to understand the concept or subject matter easily and as a mode of communication. In this context, using the local language in academic spaces is not merely an educational preference, but an act of cultural reclamation. This calls for a shift in societal behavior towards the linguistic equality, where the teaching environment let go of superiority in the English language and empower local languages to be able to have an educational system that uphold inclusivity, diversity, and inclusion of all learners. Until institutions recognize our linguistic identity, efforts toward decolonization will remain limited.
Genuine change requires policies that empower local languages not as a secondary alternatives but as equally valued mediums of learning and identity.